We went through Andor, and this time let's get ready for another exciting edition of Talk About. And this week, we'll talk about The Bad Batch, Season 2. I'm Gibson Shamar, and I'm going to take you on a journey through the galaxy far, far away once more, this time into animated territory. We're going to talk about the characters and the show, so activate your deflector shields and get your gunships ready, because this is going to be one heck of a ride. Well, the show doesn't really have much about the characters beyond their base characteristics, so we're going to go more in depth with the story itself and what we can get from it. You have the leader of the Bad Batch, Hunter. He's a clone with enhanced senses and a sense of honor. He's willing to make the hard calls in fights. Then we have Tech, who is the smart guy of the group. He's actually the most complex out of all of them. He's all calculations and logic, but there is a softer side to him that we only ever get glimpses of. He's aware of human emotions based on research, but not actual experience, and this puts him at odds with Wrecker throughout the season, and gets him into a heated moment with Omega as well. We then have Wrecker, who is the strong guy of the group. He's supposed to be the adorable one of the group because of his oafish nature. He's not dumb like Billy from Billy and Mandy, Philip J. Fry, or even Goku in Dragon Ball Super, but he is lacking in a lot of areas. But then again, it's never really explored because Star Wars doesn't really have any space for that kind of character. He does have a lot of expertise in handling huge weapons. He really enjoys that, and being loud, and explosions. Yeah, he's a lively one, and the one who's most likely to keep getting the group into trouble. Then we have Echo, who is a Clone Wars veteran. He underwent augmentation to become something of a cyborg and left the Army of the Republic to join Clone Force 99, aka the Bad Batch, where he felt like he belonged because they were all freaks and weirdos just like he was. I mean, in a galaxy full of aliens and their clones, I don't really know why he felt so different. Anyway, we move on to other characters like Crosshair. He's an interesting guy. He's very intense and takes his job very seriously. If he worked with the Bad Batch, I'm sure Omega would have had a sub-story with him where she's afraid of him and the others tell her not to be so uneasy around him. He's a slick guy, very resourceful, and makes full use of his sniper abilities. And the interesting part? He works for the Empire. Willingly. We then have the main person of interest in the show, Omega. She's a female clone. For some reason, they say that she is unaltered and a pure clone, just like Boba. I'll have you know, just like everyone else who has pointed it out, that if she were unaltered, she would have been a boy. But that's not the case, is it? Also, something not everyone puts much thought into. Why is her hair blonde? Anyway, she's the point of view character, and everyone seems to be after her for some reason. We don't know why. Twitter fan theorists say that she is force sensitive. Others say that she's a key component in creating Snoke. Yeah, right. As of the end of the season, we still don't know what's so special about her, but we will get to learn, hopefully in Season 3, which is said to be the final season. She's curious, an optimist, passionate, and is the voice of emotional reason in the group. She usually gets the guys to do stuff and trust people with her kind-hearted nature, which is in contrast to their cold, distant nature. We've got interesting side characters too, like Nala Se, the Kaminoan, or Kaminoan, like they say in the show. I don't really know what the correct pronunciation is. I just know that in the movies they said Kaminoans. But anyway, she seems to be clueless about the Empire's true dealings, but was in on the whole deal of Order 66 since the creation of the clones. She's the one who's very concerned with the capture of Omega. She even hires bounty hunters to get her. We could say that she's the main antagonist of the show. Then there's Sid, who is a Trandoshan, who used to supply the Jedi with information and now helps the Bad Batch with odd job assignments that require their special skills. Funnily enough, her duplicitous nature and her doubtful nature actually get to the Batch's last nerve, and they cut ties with her in the beginning of the season after she screwed them over in a mission. Uh, really was surprised by that. That's not how these things work, but there it was. Their deal ended, and she was no longer in the show. I mean, she always showed to have little regard for their lives, but presented a welcoming attitude. I mean, they're mercenaries, and she's an informant. I don't understand why it was such a big deal that she didn't care about their lives. Well, that's what it's supposed to be like. Anyway, let's move forward. Then there's Fee Genora, who presents herself as some sort of highly resourceful pirate and gets the group into some of the fun adventures they go on in this season. She's a lot like a female Jack Sparrow, except she's not as resourceful or witty. Okay, she's just a fun pirate person. She also led the batch to their new home, which they ended up having to save towards the finale. It was really something to behold, so yeah, she's the fun aunt of the group, in Omega's eyes at least. We also have Emily Carr. She's a scientist who is assigned to analyze clone health and the like, and is shown working on Crosshair after he gets injured. There isn't much about her except for one very interesting bit of information, which leads to the plot twist we see at the end of the show. She's a female clone too! And to my surprise, she has brown hair, unlike Omega's blonde hair. So we went through the characters, now let's get to the story. The Bad Batch were introduced in the final season of the Clone Wars, and from the very moment they were introduced, I could see that Dave Filoni wanted them to become fan favorites, and for the fan base to demand a show about them. I'm not sure if the fans even had time to make their voices heard because a show was announced not long after that season ended, or maybe even during the season. I initially saw this as some vanity project just to add to his resume at Lucasfilm because, honestly speaking, there's nothing to tell here. It's not like Rogue One where they answered a question that didn't really need a whole movie, but was done anyway. This is just a show that works purely as filler. For the entirety of the first season, I didn't know what the point of the show was, as it only created questions which are so unnecessary to the lore, like, what's the deal with Omega? Why is the Bad Batch not in Star Wars Rebels, Rogue One, or the original trilogy? Are they going to get the Ahsoka treatment and always happen to be somewhere else when galaxy-changing events are taking place? Is that what we're going to have to do with all of these Star Wars characters that become fan favorites now? At least the second season gave us a kind of reason to want to watch it if we're watching essential Star Wars stuff. The season starts dealing with how the clones were decommissioned and the Stormtrooper project was introduced. Again, like Rogue One, I don't think it needed an entire show to tell us. Even as a 12-year-old back in 2008 when I watched the original trilogy for the first time, FYI, I watched Star Wars in chronological order. Don't hate me. I always assumed that the Clone Project ended because they served their purpose and now they could get Stormtroopers. Unfortunately, many people in the fan base thought that the Stormtroopers were clones, and others demanded an explanation as to why they're not clones. One thing led to another, and now we reach the point where a show was made, and part of its season, well, the second season, explained that. Either way, it was handled really well. Palpatine was shown to be just as manipulative as ever, even when things didn't go as he planned. After the good guys thought they foiled his plan by exposing the Empire's part and destroying Kamino to the Senate, thinking that they stopped the Stormtrooper program from starting, since it would mean that the Empire was already taking matters into its own hands and killing clones instead of retiring them with dignity, Palpatine just came up and said that the clones destroyed it under orders from a rogue general, and they did so without question, and so the Stormtrooper program was accepted.
Excellent!
That was an excellent play, and very good. I also like how they, for once, showed the Empire actually conquering a planet. Every Empire era / Rebel era story shows the Empire getting booted, beaten, or usurped, despite the characters always saying that the Empire is growing stronger every day. But I really appreciated how, for once, the Empire actually won. We need more moments like this in these stories. They're not supposed to have happy endings or even hopeful endings. It's supposed to be a time of dread, desperation, with the hope part coming when Luke joins the rebellion and destroys the Death Star. That would be very good for reigniting the spark of hope that was long lost and enhance his importance to the history of the galaxy. Not have pretty much everyone constantly defeat the Empire and then Luke shows up and does pretty much the same thing everyone else has done. I don't like how the show has fan favorite clones disobeying Order 66 either. There wasn't much of it in this season, but it's there. And I'm glad that the badge got back to killing people. In the last season, they stunned clones who were in Empire-occupied planets because they didn't want to kill their brothers who were under microchip control. You do realize that by knocking them out and leaving them there, you're only doing yourselves a favor, right? And by yourselves, I mean yourselves a favor. They'll just wake up and resume their reign of terror. Never mind. It must have been part of the grand design or something. Or wait, no. This is Star Wars. It's like poetry. It rhymes. This season abandoned that and had them shooting clones. And it started with Wrecker blowing them up. Good work, Wrecker. Speaking of good work, the animation team is phenomenal. This show is one of the most beautifully animated 3D shows I've ever seen. The graphics are so beautiful and lifelike. It's almost as if they took videos of real-life places and just lowered the resolution so it looks rendered. It is amazing, and I must say that I wish they did more work on several other projects because their work is just top-notch. The banter between the batch gets a lot more interesting in this season too. We get to see the downside of them working with each other since they have such radically different personalities and skills. Tech is the standout, and he's at the center of a lot of it. We could even say that he's sort of the main character in this one. Of course, that is until he died. I saw some Twitter people post about how they cried when that happened, so we might see him come back in season 3. Can't have people too sad watching a Star Wars show. Omega doesn't get much of the spotlight in this one. We're just reminded every once in a while that folks are still after her, but that only comes to focus in the last couple of episodes, which leads to her being captured and finding out that she's not the only clone. Oh my. Really? You're not the only clone? Female clone, that is. Is this setting up another spin-off based on female clones set after the season 3 finale? We can only wait and see. We get to see a fan-favorite Jedi youngling return as well, and he's that Wookiee kid from that lightsaber finding episode from the Clone Wars. Yeah, he's in. And he goes through an adventure and is left with his people on Kashyyyk. You spared his life. Where was he during the original trilogy? Why didn't he participate in the Battle of Endor? See, these are questions we have to ask ourselves, and at some point, the galaxy is a big place won't be a good enough excuse anymore. It already isn't. Why wouldn't the Jedi go to the Battle of Endor in order to take the Emperor out once and for all? I mean, all the ones we've seen so far have been in contact with the Rebel Alliance, so the Rebel Alliance would contact them for their final offensive against the Empire and would need all the help they could get. Well, no? Okay then. Well, this season is certainly more focused than the last season and actually generated hype for the next season. Hopefully, we get the answers we're looking for. So, I'm guessing that was our Bad Batch Talk. Tune in next week for Mandalorian Season 3. In the meantime, we won't be silent. Check out our Facebook page, our Instagram page, and our website for other forms of content. We do more than just talk about shows we're watching on YouTube. Check our stuff out. You'll like it.